You're listening to Paranormal M, where facts fade and the phantoms rise. Each episode shines a light on the dark things that still linger. Subscribe now and ring the bell. The supernatural doesn't knock. Well, sometimes it does. So my office, it's kind of haunted. I've been working in this company for about a month now. Got my first paycheck. Yay. So basically, I work in a small office alone. The other person that works in the room with me, it's basically one of the boss of the company. He rarely is in the office with me, since he has other stuff to do around the company. The fact that I'm alone doesn't really bother me. I can play my music while I work, and, well, I can be more, let's say, free on what I do. Still have my work to do, so I'm still busy. After 1 week on working in the company, I've started to notice strange things. Now at this point, I want to point out the fact that I do believe in ghosts. I really do, but I'm not the type of person that if he hears a rumor, he jumps to the conclusion that it is a ghost. I investigated, and I try to recreate that sound or give an explanation. Or can say that I'm skeptical, like a skeptical believer if you want to. Every now and then, when I look at my monitor, and I do my work, I can see shadows or something moving within the corner of my eye. And the first time, I simply thought that I was maybe seeing some reflection of the light coming through the window of the room. I simply accepted that explanation. The week later, it was time to go home. And due to the new COVID regulations here, I must clean and sanitize the whole room. Cleaning my desk that's in front of the door, and I was giving my back to the door while turning, and I saw something standing next to the door. Didn't really mind it since I thought it was my boss coming to tell me that I could leave the office and go home. I was going to reply while I was walking toward the trash can to throw away some papers. Noticed that there's actually no one in the room with me. That left me a bit shocked, actually. I thought it was simply my mind tricking me a little bit, you know. Pretty much all day alone in the office without anyone. I guess that it's something that could happen, so I simply shrugged it off and went home. The next day when I walked in with the boss, we found our chairs around the office and not near our desks. It's kind of strange, but I thought that maybe the cleaning lady cleaned the floor and moved them. So I simply expressed my thought that to the boss, maybe he said the ladies come in Friday. But the date was Wednesday, and this actually gave me the chills. A little bit confusing. Pretty much every day, a pen or pencil rolls down from a table. I simply think that it's normal. Maybe they're a little bit inclined, and the pencils, maybe pens, they wrote pensa, whatever that might mean, tend to fall off alone from the table. But today happened something strange. I think that this never happened to me or my boss, neither because he was as shocked as I was. A little bit of backstory. The company that I work in is a very laid-back company. Obviously, I have work to do, but it isn't really serious and 100% focused on your work type of job. The walls are colorful, the people are cheerful, and my boss is super funny. I really like this place because it gives me all the creativity that you need to work. Some of you might agree with me that the mood that you're in, the place that you're working in, influences your work and the way you work. I do agree. I joke a lot with my boss since it's pretty young, or I guess he's young. And we tend to laugh and make some jokes even while working, while he's in the office with me. So we had lunch together. We had lunch with a couple of other people in the company and me, my boss, and another woman that works there while we're working in the back of our offices. The woman wanted to ask something to my boss, so she was coming with us to our office. When he opened the door, a cold breeze blows in our face. My boss joked about the fact, asking me, "Did you left the window open by any chance?" In quotes. We'd laugh a bit, but when he walked in, my blood actually freezes. There were papers and drawings scattered off the floor of the office, pens and pencils too. Everything was a total mess. The woman got scared and she decided to walk away. I totally understand her, honestly. The fact is that it was snowing outside and there was no chance in hell that me and my boss would open the damn window. Me and my boss started to clean everything up, and at a certain point he received a call. Got out of the office, leaving me alone cleaning it up. While I was picking up some papers from the ground, something touched my shoulders 2 times. Something touched my shoulder. 2 times. The kind of taps that you do to a friend on his shoulder, I'm guessing. To make him turn, I turned and saw nothing behind me. This is the most strange and kind of scaring thing that has happened to me so far. I'm not scared by this, honestly, if there is a ghost there. It don't really look like it's an evil or aggressive presence. It doesn't really scares me. When something happens, I usually look around and then get back to work. And when I'm working, I'm actually too focused to think about it. It does give me chills every now and then, but I guess it's totally normal. I decided to ask my boss about what was happening in the office. He told me that he'd noticed it and it was waiting for some questions coming from me. I really like my boss. He's clear and sincere with me and everyone else. He told me that another person quitted the job because he was quote-unquote too scared and feeling bad for working there. I kind of relate to that. People are pretty sensible under the point of view and become scared about it. I honestly don't, because I prefer to have a scientific theory behind it and not jump to the conclusion of that whatever happened, it's because of a ghost. This is some wild English. I'm not supposed to comment. Anyhow, my boss went on to say that he himself have experienced strange things. Strange sounds and thing moving, but nothing more than this. 2 days rolls by and we come to today. My boss has to leave. It's because his wife is pregnant and she wasn't feeling well. Scared by it, he decided to leave early to help her if something happened. I do understand this, and honestly, I'll do the same. So I simply told him that I would take care of it. I would close the company once everyone was out and make sure that everything was turned off and stuff. If you're asking, why would your boss leave the key to a new dude around? Well, I don't know too. He was in a hurry, I guess, and tossed the keys of the first person that he found. That was me. So I simply waited the end of my shift, went to every office to turn off the lights and put everything in place. At the moment, I didn't realize the fact that I was alone in the whole establishment. So I went on, room for room, to turn off the lights. I've noticed that there was another person in the establishment. He helped me to clean stuff and turn off everything. Once we finished, we headed out to close the main door and gate. We then noticed there was still one light on. I simply told my coworker to not worry, that I'll think about it, and that he could go home. My coworker left. I went inside to turn off the light and close everything back again. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a bit scary. It's because a cheerful and happy place like that, in the darkness and without anyone going around, really looks scary, not welcoming. So I simply took a deep breath, walked toward the office with the lights on. I've opened the door and a cold breeze blows in face. It was indeed pretty cold in the whole establishment, so I simply think that when I moved the door, some air movement could have created that breeze. So I simply shrugged it off, reached the switch and turned off, and in that moment I heard footsteps running down the stairs. I peeked with my head, no other appendage, and looked in the hallway. It was all dark and couldn't see much, and in that moment I was pretty scared. Who wouldn't, after all? My scientific thoughts starts to look for an explanation that would make more comfortable and sort of, I don't know, ... safe. It's a sort of self-defiance that I have, I guess. So I went on to think about something that could explain it, but I wasn't able to find anything. I was stunned in the place, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what, honestly. What I was expecting to happen. I was scared, you could say. I decided to gather my courage, make a run for the front door. I simply run without thinking about anything. I slammed the door behind me, closed the gate, and once outside I took some deep breaths and regained the control over my body. Hopped in my car, drove back home, and that's all. Now it's pretty obvious that there is something in there, and honestly I'm not scared of it. I guess that if it was an evil presence, he or she would have tried to hurt me in that moment. I think that it's simply something that it's there and don't want to harm or do nothing. I'm not scared of this presence so far. And my boss, neither apparently. He is pretty relaxed about it, and he's been there for nearly a year. He told me that nothing really bad happened, just something annoying like papers on the ground or pens rolling off a table. Nothing much. It kind of makes me more relaxed. If someone was asking for it, yeah, my boss know about the fact that I'm writing these stuff. And until I'll say the name of the company, thing that I'll never do for a good reason, I guess, it's totally fine. And there's nothing wrong about that. At the end, it's not like we're committing crimes or stuff. And as I mentioned in previous parts, I've kept a tab open on all these weird stuff happening during the week. And in this week, nothing special really happened, except made for one single event that involved me and a coworker. Not my boss this time. I was taking a break with another person that I really enjoy to talk to. We talk about random stuff. Let's say everyday stuff. How is the work going? Is family fine? Yesterday I watched this cool film and blah blah blah, normal talk. We were drinking coffee in the front of the vending machine as always. It was a pretty busy day, and I finished my tasks, and even the other person did. We were waiting for our boss to give us some instruction on what to do next. We met at the vending machines. While talking, I've noticed with the corner of my eye something moving. I kept talking as though that it was a reflection, My coworker stopped me after a few seconds to ask me if I saw something. I nodded, obviously. I told him that it could easily be a reflection from the window. Nothing more than that. Even my coworker agreed with me, and we simply went on talking. My boss simply popped out from a corner and joined us to give us some update on the next works. He picked up a cup of coffee, too, from the vending machine. When he finished, he threw it on the bin as usual. Me and my coworker were walking back when we heard the plastic bin falling to the ground. We turned to see our boss, pretty scared by it. All the trash on the floor and the bin upside down. He simply looked at us and said, "I swear I didn't throw it that hard." I looked at my coworker and simply walked away. This is the strangest thing that's happened to me, and I'm not going to lie now. I'm still scared from what happened the other day when I had to close the company. And honestly, I still feels the chills by it. I was scared, and there's nothing wrong by saying that. Everyone else would have been, I guess, but I don't want to give up on my skeptical part. I mean, it's pretty obvious that there is something in my office. But this doesn't really mean that most of the strange things that happens aren't associated with science or natural things. I mean, light can turn on and off alone, but it could actually be some circuit problems or stuff like that, right? Right. I spoke to the devil. I woke last night. It was still dark outside. I went to the toilet as I usually do. I wake up 2 or 3 times a night. Now, to give you some idea, I live in a small 3rd-floor apartment, about 380 square feet. I'm with my girlfriend. To the left from the entrance door is the bathroom. Then a short corridor at the end of which, and to the left, there's the kitchen connected to the main room. That's with the table next to the wall, a bed opposite the table, on the other side of the room. When I was walking back to bed, I stood motionless in the kitchen. There was someone sitting at the table. It was not my girl. She's way smaller than the person that was on the chair. I was scared shitless. Wanted to run for my gun, which was next to my side of the bed. Yet I froze in place as soon as I thought about that. Then he spoke to me. Weirdly enough, it made me calm down. He had a smooth voice, nothing that seemed demonic. He was facing the window, so he had his back turned to me, and he said, "It's not the time yet, but do not lose your faith in me." I wanted to say something, but he shushed me and added, "You do not want to wake her up." Pointed at my sleeping girl with his hands. He stood up, and he was about 7 feet tall. Too dark to catch any detail about the clothing or anything else, really. He thanked me for the water there. My guess was a glass of water on the table next to where he'd been sitting. He made 2 steps in the direction of the window, placed something on the edge of the table, looked through the window and disappeared. And just like that, he was there 1 second and gone the next one. Ran to the window to look for someone outside, but there was nobody. I checked what he left on the table, and there was 9mm bullets. As it turned out later, they were taken from my gun. Then I checked the glass. It was empty. Stuck my finger inside it, and it was wet, so there was water in there earlier. After that, I felt extremely sleepy. I couldn't fight the urge to get in bed, so I did that. When I woke up, the bullets as well as the glass were still on the table. I know I'm not crazy. I haven't told anyone about this yet. My 5th grade ghost. I have something that happened when I was in 5th grade, and if you're interested, please listen to my story and try to debunk what was going on, and if it's a real ghost or maybe it's something just in my head. When it was lunchtime, me and my friends went to a specific place that we usually go to whenever it's lunchtime. The place was a grass field, a military camp. It has a lot of military trucks and stuff, and it was our personal playground. Climbing the trucks. There's actually this inconsistent tapping sound on one of the trucks. It's just a specific truck that's making the tapping sound. At first, we were scared, but eventually got used to it. But my friend, let's call him Mike saw a beautiful woman with a long white dress. He told everybody that he saw this, and, well, of course, we were curious. We followed him. He indeed was telling the truth. My friend saw the lady, except me, so, well, I was very skeptical. I didn't pay much attention to her since it was daytime, and it was kind of rude of them to call her a ghost. I still didn't see her, so I was looking for her. I found nothing. So after 30 minutes, we haven't really seen her since the first time. But Mike and the 2 other friends left, and it was just me and 2 of my friends. Let's call them Gabriel and CJ. Gabriel and CJ and I were discussing about the white lady that they saw. And of course, I was joking around because I didn't actually believe it. They always tell me that it was a ghost, and I got pretty scared. At that time, I remembered the tapping noise. CJ and I searched under the truck for something that triggers the tapping noise. But instead, we found the lady's feet on the other side of the truck. She still wore the same white dress, and after that, CJ and I got scared, which leads to Gabriel getting scared as well. We ended up going back to school at home and told my grandma, like I saw a ghost in the military camp. She knows the place since she was a former Marine soldier. I didn't even specify what ghost I saw, I just told her I saw a ghost. And that's when she told me that there was a beautiful white lady that was roaming around that camp. Her description matched so much like what we saw, and I was so freaked out. She told me that the woman is beautiful at day but turns ugly at night. She later added that there is a black-shirted man that hates daylight, tends to hide over shadows. And the next day at school, we were hesitant to go back there anymore. But at lunchtime, I invited Gabriel and CJ to go back there to figure out what was going on. Gabriel was hesitant, but accepted since he never actually saw the lady's feet. CJ, however, declined because he was scared. So after we went to that camp, it's just me and Gabriel. We're trying to find the lady again, but we found nothing. After 20 minutes of searching, I heard that same tapping noise again. It was the truck 5 feet in front of me. I called Gabriel to come here, but he was far away, trying to search for the ghost. He couldn't hear me. I decided to look under it myself. I found myself scared as hell. I went as far enough as possible so that I was basically 15 feet away from the truck. The tapping noise still continued, and I looked underneath the truck. I was very far, so I couldn't really see much. But after I concentrated, I saw a black man. A figure hanging from the truck. He was looking straight at me. It made me freak out so much. I called Gabriel and told him let's leave. And without any explanation, he was so confused, but I think he saw how scared I was, so went along anyway. After that, I was never going back there again. And to this day, I'm still puzzled on what's going on. Never really believed the ghost was real. But after that, I'm starting to doubt myself. Visited by a woman in shadow figure while recovering from surgery. I just had surgery on Monday, and I'm out of work for the next 3 weeks. I believe I've always been sensitive since a young age. Before surgery, people would ask if I'm nervous about surgery. I'd honestly tell them that I'm not nervous. I trust my doctors. I'm at peace if something happens and I die. I told them the only thing I was nervous about was becoming a super psychic and not getting any sleep for the rest of my life because I have ghosts visiting me while I'm sleeping. Alrighty then. People would laugh and say that's so me, and we all went on with our days. Well, as soon as I came home, I felt like there were so many spirits in my home. I even saw a shadow person in the corner of my room, which isn't an uncommon occurrence. Knowing that I was just coming out from anesthesia, and I was pretty drugged up, I didn't necessarily believe what I was seeing. I especially kept seeing this woman, which I can't see her face. She's wearing late 40s and early 50s clothes, just walking in and out of my room. I just associated this with me being drugged up. At night I'd be visited and the shadow person and not getting a lot of sleep. During the day was this woman and somehow I was able to get sleep. Well, I didn't believe these could be real until one afternoon I was by myself for about an hour. It was while my caretaker had to go into work and finish up some things. I was napping on my bed and my cat was sleeping on my legs. I heard what sounded like somebody opening kitchen cabinet doors, hearing noises of things moving in the living room, and thinking my sister's come back from work. I hear a swishing and shuffling walking sound down the hallway. Saw the woman in the 40s and 50s dress go straight into my sister's room. My cat's head shot up. He just sort of started into her room for the longest time. I saw his ears perk and move when he heard what sounded like her dresser drawers opening and closing. Then my cat relaxed after we stopped hearing anything, and I did too. I texted my sister. She had a mild panic attack because she couldn't remember locking the front door after she left. She rushed home to make sure someone wasn't actually in the house. She didn't find anything, and we went through possible noise causes. She was nervous. There's a fly in my back. Get off me. She was nervous because she knew of my abilities, but I always reassured her that I could kind of take care of the house and make it a safe place even with visiting spirits. I always have, but since I'm recovering and not totally mentally here because of the drugs, I know I'm not as strong, and I'm definitely in a weakened state to fight off negative spirits. Weakened. Well, the next day, my mother's staying with me, so my sister goes to work. I'm not supposed to be lifting anything 2 pounds or more, so they're in my hands right now. I remember just resting in the living room while my mom was in her office working from home. I saw the woman walk by me into the kitchen. She disappeared. I never get a threatening feeling from her. Honestly, I feel quite safe when I do see her. But at this moment, I get a text message from my boyfriend while he's at work. And for some reason, when he has a ghost experience, I'm having something simultaneously. Usually, these are much darker spiritual experiences. He told me he's on the forklift, saw above him something in the shape of a human, but didn't give off real human vibes. It was just clinging to the ceiling and then disappeared. Every time that day, he saw this thing and was always staring at him threateningly. I always saw and felt the woman nearby me. I'm wondering now if this woman is my protector. I'm going through my surgery in my weakened state, and I feel very blessed now to see her. I'm not scared. My cat doesn't seem to be nervous either. Haven't seen the shadow person much since I've seen an increase of her. My sister jokes now when I tell her when I see the woman. If I see her go into the kitchen, my sister says, "Oh, she's telling me I need to do dishes. It's filthy in there." Or yesterday when I saw my bedroom curtain move like somebody walked by it and heard a weird sound, my sister recreated it and stubbed her toe on the step ladder. I've been used pretty much going to bed. I've been using, as they wrote, stubbed her toe on the step ladder that I've been using to go into bed, right? Which made the exact sound I heard, and she said, "Well, I guess even ghosts can stub their toes when they come to check in on you." Whispers. So one day in 2020, I don't remember the specific month, my mother left the house for the day, so I was the only one there. I was just sitting in my room when I heard a whisper of my name. It was a very tiny, quiet whisper. It was straight into my ear. And after that, I started crying and got kind of creeped out. I went to the bathroom to collect myself and try not to overthink it. Just kind of calm down overall. So I walked to the bathroom, and I was already on edge, so I ran to the bathroom and then slammed the door behind me once I got in. Right when I looked in the mirror, I heard the whispers again. But this time, it started out quiet. And every time I heard my name, the voice got deeper and deeper and deeper vocally and deeper into my head like it was in my ears. After that happened, I was freaked out, and I called my mother crying. When I told her, she didn't act worried, as if it was okay. I also have another thing that happened when I was babysitting my youngest brother, and this also happened in 2020, but I also have no idea when. While babysitting my little brother, he came into my room. He told me he was hungry, so I went downstairs with him, and when he got to the kitchen, I stood behind him. When he was in front of the fridge, I felt breathing on my neck, and I felt my name. I don't know how to explain how I felt my name, but that's the only way I can explain it. I immediately started crying. I told my brother to go upstairs and got a knife, went around the house checking every room. So it's like 3 to 7 days after I first posted this story. I was thinking about to again, and I remember that I did the Ouija board with my stepdad and his friend down in the woods near our house. I didn't remember when I first posted this. It's because I always thought that they were just playing a joke on me, or was just doing it to play it with them. Maybe they were scaring me because I was 10 or 11. Anyway, when we did the Ouija board, we got into contact with Zozo. I'm sure some of you already know who that is, but if you don't, here's a little summary. Zozo is an ancient demon who communicates people via Ouija board. And if you say his name while playing Ouija, apparently he possesses you, which is why I'm a little bit off-putted by this theory. I've done some research, and I haven't seen anybody that has had Zozo attached to them. And I feel like I've always had this minor stuff happen to me. Nothing big like other people's stories. I feel like it's something I just don't know what it is yet. I also have another story that's from 2018 when I was 9. Happened at my grandpa's house, and that's what really scares me. I didn't play the Ouija for the first time until 2020. I mean, I did play a paper one in 2017, and after that everything started happening, but it's not like it worked or anything. And at this point, I think I'm just overthinking all of this, and maybe I just get scared easily. But if you want to hear the 2018 story, just comment, because I feel like that one was way scarier than the 2021. Three stories The first story is from my cousin. Let's call her Amy. One night she was sleeping over at her grandmother's house and he was woken up from something alerting her. Apparently it was a noise from downstairs, and being curious but also ready to hit any intruder, she headed downstairs and in the living room saw our dead great-grandmother. We haven't ever met her, but we know what she looked like because of photo albums we were shown multiple times growing up. Amy told me about it the next day since I was coming to visit. I lived 4 hours away at the time. 1. We've been keeping it a secret for a while now. I don't think she got much sleep for the next couple of days Amy stayed there. 2. The next story is from my other cousin. Let's call him Ben. It links into the first story, so similar things happened again. He heard a noise from downstairs. He was younger than Amy when it happened, so he wasn't as cautious, but he headed downstairs anyway. That's when he saw our great-grandmother. And by the way, he didn't know it was her since he never saw her photos as much as me and Amy did. He ended up staying awake that night because he was scared. He kept it a secret for a while, but he didn't end up telling Amy, who told me. And when he told us what he saw, we pieced that it was our great-grandmother from the description he gave to Amy. I don't think anybody else in the family has experienced this, especially since my grandmother only moved in a few years before our great-grandmother's death. So all my aunts and uncles really moved out and us kids nearly pretty much just stayed the night. I haven't told anyone either. Our grandmother has since moved from that house as well. 3. Last story is from my sister. Let's call her Kim. This was in my old house, and at the time my mom, sister, and me lived in the house. We moved there to be closer to the family, and we were about to move again to the house we're currently in. So we were taking pictures of our house so we could sell it. My sister took up the job of taking a picture of our connected dining room and living room. In the house, the fridge was in the dining room because there wasn't enough room in the kitchen. She finished the pictures for the living room and well, she only had one picture to go for the dining room. The last picture was of the fridge to the left of the back door in the middle. You could see some of the dining room table to the right. She took the photo, but didn't check it fully since it was late and really dark outside. The next day, my mom was posting the photos, but saw something strange. It looked like there was people in the picture, but when the picture was taken, no one was in the way of the photo, and the people was faded, like how you'd expect ghosts to be. Anyway, there was 3 people in the picture. A young boy, maybe 12, a woman who looked around 20, early 30s, a man who looked around the late 30s to early 40s. They also were dressed weird, like they were dressed to fit with the Victorian-style clothes. The man was stood in front of the fridge, and the fridge was sideways in the photo, so he was stood next to the fridge, but to the photo was in front. The lady and the boy was outside looking in the house through the back door. They looked sad, as if they were locked outside or something. My mom, nor sister, remembers this, since it happened a while ago. I don't know if you can take pictures of ghosts, but I'm, just typing what I've heard. My house might be haunted. So everything started about 7 months ago. It was one of my first nights being home alone. I had been home alone hundreds of times for the day, but this was one of the first throughout the night. I was playing games on my computer when I heard my dog start barking hysterically. My dog is not one to just bark at nothing, especially not in the house. So I knew something was up when we went to check on her. She was alerting to something down the hallway to the front door. She started growling, and then I heard the lock on the front door rocking back and forth. I immediately thought that somebody was trying to break in. The lock was rattling for about 20 seconds before it stopped. Then a few seconds later, I heard 3 thumping, creaking footsteps above my upstairs. It freaked me the fuck out. Checked every room upstairs, checked the camera outside, and there was nothing. And there is a glass storm door on the outside of the front door, so whatever was moving the lock was from inside the house. That was it for a few months, so I kind of forgot about it until my dad started asking me, or my mom, if they were walking around upstairs in the middle of the night. Neither of us were up, and my dad said they kept hearing footsteps and faint talking for 4 days before it stopped. And a few nights ago, I was up at around 2 a.m. when my parents were asleep, and I could have sworn I saw somebody about 8 foot tall standing in the pitch-black living room. We've also noticed over the past few months that small things like soap bars and screwdrivers and yarn would go missing for a few weeks. Then they'd wind up just turning up somewhere completely different and out of place. The first event in December was about a month after my grandfather passed. So I'd like to think that this was him giving us signs, but every time something happened, it feels like my heart stops. Like something isn't just messing with us for fun. It's a weird sensation. Any insight would be helpful. Streetlights and weird events. How I started affecting streetlights. I smoke pot almost daily, and I've been taking prescribed antipsychotics since recently. When everything started, I was on antidepressants. I understand if you don't believe me, but I'm convinced it has nothing to do with any of this. Lately, I've been experiencing strange things related to lights. It's been happening for around a month and a half. The most recent weird event was yesterday. The events all happen at night. I haven't found a pattern or reason for them to happen. Most of the times, I'm alone when something happens, and I write this hoping somebody can share their thoughts or if they've had similar experiences. Well, so far the patterns is that they happen at night and when you're alone. Let's continue. It all started on July, the day I met a friend. I was helping a bartender, a friend of mine, cleaning up just before closing the bar. A girl comes in right when the bartender's in the storage room. She wants tobacco, so I turn on the machine for her to buy. After finishing with the cleanup, I started making a joint. I realized I didn't have rolling paper. Went outside to ask her for one and saw the girl from before. She told me she had it at home and that she lived nearby. While we go there, we got along really well. Told her we could smoke together in a park near her house. And this park is right next to an industrial zone, and I work in a company nearby. Behind where we were sitting, there's a warehouse. It's late at night, so everything is dark and everything is lit by the light of the warehouse. But it's still pretty dark while we're talking, and, well, we see a creepy shadow that looks like the Western depiction of death. We start whispering how creepy it is until the person is lit by the streetlights. It was just a Muslim woman wearing a hijab that made her look like that. We started laughing. I had an idea. I started using suggestion to scare my friend. I pointed to a bush that was in the dark, and I said to my friend that it looked like the woman we just saw passing. I began doing things I read online that in theory attract ghosts. For example, I read online that if you whisper at night, you attract spirits. I didn't believe in anything of the sort because I've never experienced something paranormal. But after this, I told her I would walk with her to her home because she was so scared. We stood up and we started walking. I looked back and acted as if I saw something, and I told her to hurry up. After doing this a couple of times, I realized that 2 of the lights of the warehouse, they were off. They're right behind where we were sitting. Pointed it out to my friend and told her that we should walk faster. and as we're exiting the park, I looked back and the lights were on. On my walk back home, I saw more strange stuff. I don't have any proof of it. Well, if anybody's interested, I can follow up on telling all the weird things that are all happening to me lately. I even saw what I can only describe as a ghost. Three childhood experiences, 1983 to 1987. I was having trouble sleeping. That's because it was a warm night. My bedroom door was open and I could see into the laundry. I heard a creaking noise like the floorboard shifting, so I looked up to the doorway. Thought it was my parents coming through to use the toilet or something because I didn't really see them walk past. And it was dark with a little bit of a weak street light outside. I kept staring at the doorway because I kind of sensed somebody there, and I then heard a really deep male voice which said, "Tonight you will sleep on the edge of your grave." The voice came from an empty doorway. I was so scared and freaked out I yelled, "Go away!" Then there was this deep laughing that went on for 5 to 10 seconds. My parents had been in bed. They heard me yell, "Go away," and came to see what was wrong. And that wasn't the end of the incidents in this house. Number 2. The same address about a year or so later. It was daytime. My dad, my mom, and I were home. My dad was outside and I was in my bedroom and my mom was in the shower. I heard a really loud thump on the roof. I got up and walked around looking at the roof, wondering what it was. It was then I heard footsteps above me. I could hear the steps moving directly above me, so I followed underneath them. And with each step, it was apparent it was traveling toward the bathroom where my mom was. The roof access and manhole was also in the bathroom, and as I got near the bathroom door, my mom came flying out with a towel wrapped around her, nearly knocking me over. She was screaming out for my dad and panicking, saying there's someone on the roof. He didn't believe her. But then I chimed in and said I'd heard it too. So he got up to the manhole and looked around, but couldn't see anything. He never heard anything up there again and never had animals or anything on our roof or around the property. Whatever it was very heavy. Number 3. At the same dress, I can't remember my age, but I was probably around 8 years old. It was dark and I was in my bedroom. It faced the rear yard and... Sorry, there's crazy banging sounds outside and it's 4 a.m. A little bit distracted. It was dark, and I was in my bedroom, which faced the rear yard. I had large sliding windows with curtains on the top half of the wall. Bottom half was solid fibro. I saw a light shining on the back of the curtain. I thought it was somebody outside with a torch shining it on my curtain from the rear garden. It was a circular white to yellow light with well-defined edges about 10 to 15 centimeters in diameter. Kind of dancing around the curtain, kind of doing figure eights, some of the other random movements. Then all of a sudden, a second identical light appeared on the curtain. They were both dancing around each other. I was watching them for what I'd estimated to be about a minute. Then, this is where it gets weird. The lights dropped below the window, and the curtain now appeared in the solid fiber wall. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I knew the light couldn't travel through solid objects. Thought maybe somehow the lights were actually coming from the inside, and I just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't tell if the lights were there, three-dimensional or not, and all of a sudden they just vanished. Dorm room haunting. One of my paranormal experiences, I think so at least. This happened back in 2011. My first 2 years of college, I went to a satellite campus of a much larger school. They had 3 sets of dorm buildings, one being an old apartment building from the Victorian era. I lived on the 3rd floor of said building. The dorm was like an apartment. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. I didn't hide sight, it was pretty sweet. Anyways, I shared a bedroom with my friend Ollie. Ollie and I kept having these very weird matching dreams. Always about somebody that we knew, and it was always sexual in nature. Me and her and my other roommate Elle were all talking about it one day. Elle was super into stuff like auras and whatnot, and she suggested the dream indicated that there was an item left behind in the room. We were like, yeah, okay, sure. But we still decided to humor the idea. We searched the room, and we find this old pillbox over the mounding of our bedroom door. We were freaked out, but who knows, maybe somebody from the year before hit it. After it happened, shit started happening. Temperature changes, random knocks on the doors when no one was there but me. The most notable was a stack of textbooks being knocked down. I was the only one there, and no windows were open. And the odd part was, our weird dream stopped too. Elle ended up building a shrine around it, and things seemed to chill out. And at the end of the year, I placed it back where I'd found it. We also contacted the girls who lived there the year before. They had no idea it was there. Quick story from my childhood. Wind of voices. First off, the only history of mental illness I have is anxiety, depression, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Not ruling anything out, but I've never had auditory or visual hallucinations ever. Except when I did shrooms in college, but this happened way before that. So I'll cut to the chase. I was like 6 and had gotten into a fight with my mom, and of course, as kids sometimes do, I yelled, "I hate you," down the stairs at her. I was at the top landing. She said something back, then slammed the door that was at the bottom. Instantly, I felt this weird force, like wind, but not cold or anything. It was circling around my head. I heard so many whispers from many different voices within this odd energy circle. Instantly, I yelled, "Stop!" And everything went dead silent, like too silent. Sat there for a second, absolutely bewildered. Eventually, I got up, talked to my mom, forgot about it, but it's always been in the back of my head. The only other weird things to happen in that house was, 1, every night when I tried falling asleep, it sounded like somebody violently turning in bed, like moving sheets would keep me up. And 2, well, maybe this is something normal, but at least once a week I'd see what looked like lightning inside. Picture a streak of lightning, but inside a dark room. Always electric blue or green. Unsettling experience while lost in the bush. My friend and I had a really bizarre experience on a bushwalk. Never really been able to wrap our heads around it. Curious to see if anybody in this group has any ideas about what happened to us, or what we encountered. We were both pretty experienced bushwalkers. We were pretty confident we'd be fine on this trail, even though it's not the most well-marked or heavily used trail. We've never hiked it before, but we left at 8 a.m. and told family members where we were going, and that we were planning to be back home by 4 p.m. at the latest. About 2 hours into our walk was the first sign that something was off. We couldn't get our GPS to work correctly. It was showing us as being in a completely different area to where we were. And this was weird, but it wasn't a big deal, I guess, since we had a map. At about 1 p.m. is when things got really strange. We had stopped to check the map. My friend said, "I think we took a wrong turn back there somewhere." Then we both felt off balance for a few seconds. Then it was dark. When we checked the time, it was 5:41 p.m. We lost almost 5 hours of time. We also started hearing this weird, heavy breathing from the direction that we had been walking towards. It sounded like a person breathing right next to us, but we couldn't see anyone. When we called out, there was no response. And we live in Australia, so we didn't have to worry about any large predators, except for drop bears, of course. But you hear stories about weirdos who hang out in the bush and murder backpackers. We're both extremely unnerved, and we just didn't feel comfortable moving toward the breathing noise. And on top of that, we agreed that we had made a wrong turn somewhere. So we turned, walked the way we came. We considered calling for help on our satellite phone. Decided we'd at least try and backtrack to where we'd lost our way and go from there before calling for help. The breathing followed us. We walked. We were both feeling dizzy. We were convinced that we were being followed by a serial killer. We were too scared to stop and try to call for help, believing if we alerted whoever was following us that help was on the way would prompt them to attack. Eventually, I was too dizzy to continue, so we stopped and called for help. We were instructed to stay where we were and wait for rescue, but the breathing sound wasn't going away. It kept moving toward where we thought we'd left the trail. At least whenever I was well enough to walk for a few minutes. The breathing followed, and eventually we found a set of stairs that was marked on the map, so... well, we were able to more accurately tell rescuers where we were. I fainted while waiting for rescuers, and my friend tells me the breathing not only continued, but sounded like it was circling us. There were never any sounds of footsteps or any indication that there was anyone there, except for the breathing. She admitted that by the time the SES arrived, she was hysterical. We're both rescued without any physical injuries. The source of the breathing and our dizziness and our lost time was never identified. It was pretty much brushed off as the product of panicked brains, and even our families didn't believe us. They thought we'd just gotten lost and been too embarrassed to call for help. Shortly after this happened, she told me that she was having nightmares about the breathing sound and the dizziness and the sense of unease she felt. She mentioned she didn't feel like she even wanted to go bushwalking or camping again, and, well, to my knowledge, she never did after that. That was pretty much the last time I heard from her over 2 years, till a few weeks ago, when she reached out to catch up. We had a short chat but didn't mention this incident, and tragically, a week later she took her own life. I don't know much about her experience, if it played part in her mental health, and I know there's always many factors in suicide. It would be silly to think that I could have prevented it. But I feel really guilty, and I didn't try to stay in contact with her, and nobody else believed her about what happened. I know that affected her a lot. I don't know if I'll ever have closure about what happened with us, and how, if at all, if it contributed to her death, and I guess I'm wondering if this experience sounds familiar to anybody, if anybody else heard anything like this. Has anyone ever seen anything like this? So just for context, my parents divorced when I was around 10 years old. I was raised by my mother for my formative teenage years, whilst my father sold up and moved to Thailand to set up business there and live a life of debauchery. Yucky. I eventually reconnected with him a few years later, at the age of 18. He invited me over to Thailand to holiday with him for a while, and I disliked Thailand. Don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful country with some of the greenest landscapes I've ever seen, but most of the people are scammers, con artists, and thieves and liars. You're not wrong. And that's just the expat community. The locals take things to a new level. I'm not a fan of well-used ladies, and so the prostitution aspect of the country doesn't appeal to me either, and in short, I very quickly lost interest in being there. My father's bars and businesses were in Phuket, but his home was in Korat up in the north of the country. He spent some time in the tourist hub of Phuket and then headed north to see the house that he'd built for himself. It was nice, etc., but I was bored with the trip and wanted to go home. My father then made mention of a temple not too far away that was something special to see. A phenomenal building in the design of an elephant of Wat Ban Rai. He'd seen it several times already and wasn't interested in taking me. His paramour, Kisorn, offered to do so in his stead, so she could perform her prayers there, and so off we went. The temple really is a sight to behold and sits on artificial islands surrounded by water, but the magnitude of the building was not at all what I was expecting. I'd encourage anybody reading to take a look on the internet of images of the site. We walked over the bridge and inside the temple, which was full of fascinating murals. It was the first time during the holiday I was genuinely enjoying myself. And eventually, I'd seen enough and made to leave. But Kisorn asked if she could do her prayers before we left. Okay, no worries. There's a bench not far from the entrance, and I sat there and comfortably waited. A few moments later, a young Thai Buddhist monk came and sat next to me. He spoke broken English, which was considerably far superior to my Thai, and I found it quite difficult to follow his attempt at dialogue. He'd say unusual axioms and metaphors and other sentences that I wondered at what he was trying to communicate. One of the ones I've always remembered was, "The devil wears many faces. Make sure he doesn't wear yours." I wasn't being overly polite and perhaps a little stupid, and I was responding with, "Don't go bowling without your shoes," or something as idiotic as that. We were managing to converse, but not really grasping one another's meanings. After a few more minutes of conversation with the monk, I felt something tap my shoulder. It was Kisorn, having finished her prayers. She apologized for taking so long, which I thought was an unusual comment given I thought only a few minutes had passed. I replied that it was fine, and I'd been passing the time with, and gestured to the monk who was now gone. I asked if she'd seen the monk, to which she replied, "Monks everywhere." I acquiesced that there were numerous monks at the temple. I tried to describe the young one I'd just been talking with. She hadn't seen him, so fair enough. We left. It was actually 20 minutes that had passed that she'd been inside, but I didn't think too much of it because time can be subjective if you're engaged in conversation. Nothing at all unusual there. As we got to the other end of the bridge, I turned to look back at the temple as it still remains one of the truly impressive sights of my life, but I saw unusual shapes around the temple. There were orbs. They looked to be full of metallic hue, but they floated, kind of the wrong word, but closest I can describe it as. They floated around the temple as if it seemed like they were vibrating extremely fast. Closest parallel of what I saw would actually be from the Mass Effect series of games, like the orb in the engine room. I can't remember if it's from Me 1 or Me 2, but they were simply vibrating very fast and kept disappearing and reappearing from sight. It was almost like the experience of seeing stars after feeling dizzy. I rubbed my eyes to see if it was such an effect, but they were still there. I asked Kisorn what they were, and she said she had no idea what I was talking about. All she said was temple, with a confused look on her face. I was pointing and repeatedly asking what the hell they were. And even passers-by looked over and carried on their way like I was pointing at nothing, just being a nuisance. Eventually, I relented and left with Kisorn, but not before asking her to take a picture of the temple on her camera. As we got back to the car, I asked to see the photo. They were there, except the picture had captured far more than I saw. I witnessed about a dozen with my eyes and thought that unusual, but the picture captured 3 or 4 times that amount. Odd formations and some of the slightly different sizes and all over the temple. I showed it to Kisorn as proof, and she didn't want to look or know. She wouldn't look at it ever again. I've only showed a few people in my life, and some initially think it's balloons until you really look closely. See that they're not. Even the formation of them in the sky sort of bellies a natural behavior of balloons. Besides, I doubt that monks would entertain such a display anyway. I have no idea what it was, and perhaps some expression of the fourth dimension to the third, and that's only what the third dimension minds can perceive. Disembodied spirits? I have no idea. But it is doubtless one of the most unusual experiences in my life. And yes, I still have the picture. I don't have any kind of social media or anything like that to post and provide a link to. Don't know how to post images here, and I don't know how to send pictures over Reddit and personal messages, so if anybody wants to see it and has a means to post a link on the community here, then by all means message me. I've seen one and one other time separate to this event, separate. I'd love to know if anybody has experienced anything similar. I want to know exactly where that is. Ghosts wanted to open all the doors. The setting. The incident happened when I was about 12 or 15. Don't exactly remember perfectly. I woke up and everybody was asleep. My German Shepherd was by the foot of my bed, asleep. My bedroom layout had 2 doors on either side. On the left was the hallway that led to my sister's room, and it was open, while the other on my right was the hallway that led to my dad's room, which was closed. Both hallways led to the main living room. The living room had a slide wooden door that led to the kitchen, and a window wall that viewed the porch and the backyard. That's the layout. The incident. Now, I woke up because I heard a loud knock on my door. Nothing unusual, I thought, because my dad knocks loudly. The only thing lighting up my room was a blue digital clock. Just enough light to see, not enough to read or write clearly. Then I heard another knock and I said, "What?" loud enough to hear me through the door. Then the knock turned into a pound, so I ignored it, and I think I was thinking that it was my dad waiting for me to open the door. However, that's when I realized my dad was still asleep, snoring loudly in his room. Then there was banging on the door, like hard double fist banging rapidly. Then I heard through that door my dad's door banging, then my sister's, and then the front door, and then the slide door to the kitchen, and pounding on the window wall all at the same time. I sat there petrified in fear. My dog was the only other living thing awake with me, and we just both sat there in my room listening to it all. It was even scaring my dog, who usually would bark or get up and check anything that could be a threat. We think she was a police dog. This went on for about a whole minute, but right when the clock struck 4 a.m., it was dead silent again. Everyone, for some reason, was still asleep, except for my dog and I. Even thinking about it now chills my bones to the core, and I have no reason to explain how this could even happen. Unsettling things happening in family home. For context, I live in an old semi-detached house in a small village in England. I'm with my parents and my younger brother and 3 large dogs. For as long as I can remember, household items have randomly vanished and reappeared days later. Things like remotes and headphones and jewelry. And once a lighter vanished from inside a cupboard and showed up on the sofa. A dog tag fell off the collar. We assumed it was lost in the woods, bought a new one. Just shy of a year later, it turned up under the dog bed, but we thoroughly cleaned the house weekly, including moving and emptying the dog beds. Chalked everything up to being forgetful or clumsy. We're forever hearing footsteps and whispers. Said it was the dogs walking or leaving a radio on sometimes. Although, always somebody at home with music playing. Almost 2 weeks ago, we went on holiday. Come back tomorrow to no updates yet. Dogs were put in kennels Tuesday afternoon. Cleaned the entire house up, Dad went out, and Mom was at work. Brother was in the kitchen with me when we heard walking on the stairs above the kitchen. Saw the wood bend slightly. And as I said, old house. Never got around to updating the floorboards, and I went to check that there was no one there. Carried on. All evening everybody could hear footsteps, but we decided it was our brains filling in the blanks with the dogs not being there. 2 or 3 a.m. comes around and we all woke up for the taxi. We were locking up and the outside light came on. Pretty hard to turn on because it's in 2 cases to avoid water damage and it's unusually high up on the wall. It takes quite a lot of force, but still it turned on and we turned it off and continued checking windows. My parents have a display cabinet for some glasses and a decanter that they were sort of given at their wedding. They're all pushed pretty far back for protection, but there's some pictures in there and 2 corks with a 20p coin, and in each my grand gave me and my brother for good luck when we were babies. Both fell at the same time when we were all sat. Mom opened the door to pick them up, and she walked to get a cloth to wipe a shelf. A glass came off of a different shelf and shattered. And as I said, these are far back to avoid this, and it was a different shelf. But okay, whatever. Then she accused me of laughing, which I wasn't, and I was really startled. She said it sounded like faint laughing as though trying to hide it. Soon enough, taxi comes, everybody gets in. All house doors and windows locked, no electronics on. Then the driver asks if my parents are leaving their eldest to look after the house. No, they have 2 kids and we're in the van, and there is a humanish figure in the window that everybody can see. Cue everybody getting out and doing a full sweep of the house. Nothing. We don't have a basement, and the attic is largely inaccessible without moving furniture in the hallway for a ladder. It would be easy to brush it off as tiredness, but the driver runs a late-night service while his son does daytime trips, and I work evenings and nights at the minute, so it was like the middle of the day. Plenty of CO alarms in the house, and we do have an old boiler, and they're all working. No gas leaks or anything. All have regular checkups at the doctors and have unrelated conditions. Just can't explain anything, and more it keeps happening. Keeps getting increasingly unsettling. I saw something peeking over the side of my bed. To start this off, I'd like to say I don't live in a creepy house. It is old, but it's the charming sort of way. Doesn't feel negative when you walk in, feels like home. Always just home. So you can imagine my absolute shock when I was laying in bed alone this morning, watching something watching me back. 4 a.m. this morning, my husband left her bed to go to the bathroom. Our room is decent size, but from where the bed sits, you can see one of the 2 windows in the room. The other one being covered by blinds and the TV. And it being 4 a.m. in the summer, it's a bit light where you can see outlines of certain things. We have no animals, and I laid in bed waiting for him to return so we could cuddle. When I blinked and suddenly saw movement in the dark. A dark mass in the shape of a head moved over the top of the covers just enough to where I could make out the fact that it was moving. I froze because I thought it was my husband. Sometimes when he gets up, he'll sit in the chair, put on headphones and play video games not to wake me up when he can go back to sleep. Or rather, when he can't go back to sleep. I thought maybe he had just gotten back in and just didn't hear the door open, and that's why he was sitting in the dark looking at me. So I asked him, "Why are you sitting on the floor?" A few seconds with my heart pounding, and there's no answer. Then I heard the doorknob click, and as soon as my husband walked in, it ducked down, disappeared, and I screamed, obviously, because what the fuck, and, well, he did a search and didn't find any intruder, and still can't explain it, and I'm scared to go into my bedroom alone now. Got pranked by a ghost. Back in the days, I was still a student. I rented an apartment with 2 other students. Our apartment contains 3 rooms. One room is next to mine, sharing a wall, and another door is facing my room's door. The student in the room next to mine set up his subwoofer on the ground and stick up on the wall between our rooms, so whenever they play war games on the computer, you can feel the bombings and explosions if you're inside my room. Everything seems to be good until one night I got woke up by these loud noises of firing and bombing and explosions from other 2 rooms at 3 a.m. I was hearing my friends talking, though I can't hear clearly what they're saying, and they're laughing, and one of them really sounds like a horse when he laughs, feeling the bombings and explosions. And next I tried to cover my ears with my pillow, but it's too loud and I really can't go back to sleep. I rubbed my eyes and I got up and walked to my door. My voice got stuck at a weird high pitch and I wanted to tell them to use headphones and keep silent so I could sleep. When I turned the doorknob and started to open the door, suddenly all the loud noises are gone, and didn't stop and continued to open the door quickly. Knocked on the student in the opposite room door, only to find that he was asleep with his girlfriend on his bed. Whenever his girlfriend came over, she doesn't allow him to play computer games. A good girl. Still, I thought he was playing a prank on me, but even at that time, I also think it isn't really possible. So I asked about the loud noises. He looked puzzled and insisted he didn't even turn on the computer at that time. One thing that's even more strange is he reminded me that the student next to my room was gone to his parents' house for the weekend, so his room was empty and locked. Left a spare key to me just in case I opened the room to check the computer was off and nobody inside either. I thought it probably is a hallucination, though I don't think so, as I'd never had such an experience. And even after the student living in the room next to the back, we told him about what I experienced. His face turned white and told me he experienced the same thing around a week before I experienced it. The difference was that night the other student and I are both not in the room, so we just thought he was having a hallucination of some sort, didn't tell us. Same thing was, it happened at 3 a.m. 2 weeks later, I got woken up from some panic knockings on my room door at 3 a.m. It was the student living in the opposite room, and his face was white too as he gathered us and told us he just experienced the same thing. We weren't clever enough back then, as, well, after we 3 experienced it, we decided to set up video recordings at night trying to find out what's going on, and we never experienced this again, and we graduated and left. Didn't tell other classmates about it, but none of them experienced the same thing. A few students who claim to be able to feel ghost presences say they do feel something in our apartment when they come over, but they said so after we told them about our experiences. 5 years after we graduated, we attended some alumni gatherings and finally found somebody who stayed in the same apartment before, and he also said he experienced something similar, like loud movie noises from other 2 rooms. We discussed on possibilities like a glitch in the Matrix, group hallucinations, and in the end we concluded probably we got played by an unarmed prank by some kind of ghost or spirit living there. Yet we don't think we know what the answer is. See ya.